8 years old, I went on my first roller coaster ride. And before I went on the ride, I was thinking it would be a fun, exciting experience and easy. And of course, once I was on, it was anything but fun, exciting, and easy. And once I was on, all I wanted to do was get off. But it's funny because once you're on, there's nothing else that you can do except wait. All you can do is hold on and wait. And once I was off, my legs were wobbly, felt like they're made out of rubber. But I did feel stronger in the end, in the sense that I was very sure that I never wanted to go on a roller coaster again. That is until much later, at least. But the ride goes up and down, goes upside down, side to side, backwards even. It's very unpredictable. And as long as you're on it, you're always moving forward, you're always getting somewhere. And that is until you end up at the very beginning again. And you're right back where you started. And there are two types of people who like these rides, or go on these rides. And the ones who actually hate it, but still go on, and those who love it. You can tell the difference really easy because those who hate it are holding on for dear life, and those who love it just have their hands way up and they don't care. But both of them are screaming. And both of them still have to wait until they get off at the end. You have to hold on and wait. It's unpredictable, those things. But I guess that's the reason why people compare roller coasters often to life. Because life is full of ups and downs, they say. It's unpredictable. You either really love it or you really hate it. But in all cases, anybody who's going through life has really no choice but to hold on and wait. Hold on for life. And so that's the idea for today. The ups and downs really are changes of state. That's what we'll talk about a little later too. Changes of state. Because like roller coasters, life will feel like you end up right at the very beginning again. It'll feel like you got nowhere. But in fact, the experience itself, the ups and downs, has changed things in you. And so even though it might feel like you're back at the beginning again, you have gained something, and that means you're that much further ahead. You actually have gone somewhere. So that's what we'll look into, changes of state. And holding on with patience really is the theme for today. And if you do it well enough, if you hold on well enough, you can actually start enjoying life. This is something we see in our reading for today, our story. We're in our final week now of our Love Over Ego series, looking at the stories of Daniel. And this time we see something happen to Daniel himself. Been thrown in the lion's den. And for the reading for today, we'd like to look at what actually led up to those events. We get to learn what got him there in the first place. So that's what we'll look at now. The story of Daniel. This is from chapter 6, from the very beginning now of this chapter. Darius is a new king now. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom. And over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel was distinguished himself above the governors and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and the satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault, because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So these governors and satraps thronged before the king and said thus to him, "King Darius, live forever. All the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and satraps, the counselors and advisors, have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which does not alter." Therefore King Darius signed the written decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home. And in his upper room, with its windows open toward Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. Have you not signed a decree that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which does not alter. So they answered and said before the king, that Daniel, who is one of the captives from Judah, does not show due regard for you, O king, or for the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. So then he's shown it to the dead. It's clear by now that we have a new enemy in place since the Babylonians. Previous chapters up through chapter 5 of Daniel, we see the Babylonians in charge, King Nebuchadnezzar is ruling, and then after him, King Belshazzar. But then at the end of chapter 5, we saw how the Persians invaded Babylon, so now the Persians are in place, and Darius is the new king. However, Daniel is still kept in high esteem. Now, the story with Daniel in the lion's den is one of the more well-known stories of Daniel. Usually when people hear Daniel, that's one of the first stories they think about is him in the lion's den. And this story is very similar to the one we saw already in chapter 3, with his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being bound up and thrown in the fiery furnace. And they were thrown in there because they didn't bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's image. This is a very similar story. Instead of Daniel not bowing down to an image, he's thrown in for bowing down to the Lord. There are other interesting parallels too with that other story. God protected Daniel in the lion's den with an angel, just like he protected those 3 guys in the fiery furnace. An angel of the Lord was there too. And they were all fine because those guys and also Daniel were always turning to the Lord, always praying to him. And the Lord protects those who trust in him. Now, again, with the chapter 3 story, the 3 guys who were bound up, and the guards who bound them up were burned by the fire, which was not what they had intended, not what they had anticipated. And similar in this story with Daniel, if you keep reading after the lion's den, the governors and the satraps who plotted against Daniel ended up being thrown in the den and were devoured by the lions. It's a very contrary outcome to what they had expected. But this is a good story with these 2 stories. It's a good visual to see or show how evil never gets what it wants. It will try, but it won't succeed. And most of the time, it often falls upon itself. The evil falls upon itself. And this happens especially the more we choose not to get involved with it, which happens the more we choose to turn to the Lord. And that's what we see in Daniel. We've seen Daniel so far and how he represents or stands for this unwavering trust and loyalty to the Lord. And that's what he stands for in us, that trust and loyalty in the Lord. And with that trust, it keeps the love of self in us under control or subordinate. And the love of self has been represented mostly by Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar in the past. But those kings have now been dealt with. They're in the past. They've either passed on or were subdued, which means the love of self at this point in the story is now subdued as well. It's under control. Which is why we see Daniel more front and center. Daniel's now the center of attention here. And things are happening to him for the first time. Things always happened to kings before. But now it's happening to Daniel. This story shows how faith in the Lord helps us endure, especially when it is being plotted against. The focus of the reading today was what took place before the lion's den. We don't see kings this time against Daniel. We see people, presidents, satraps, governors, princes. They're trying to make themselves superior, but the way they go about it is by making what's already superior less so. They're trying to take out Daniel, take out the competition, so that they can end up on top. But as we see with Daniel, as he represents that faith in the Lord and how he represents the Lord himself, there really is no way you can take out the Lord. That's not a competition you can mess with. Now, as we look through this story, it's going to be useful to see how this parallels very nicely with a lot of stories in the New Testament. First of all, looking at the presidents and the princes, the satraps, governors who plotted against Daniel to kill him. And this is very similar to the Pharisees and the scribes, who all plotted against Jesus, trying to kill him. Neither of them could actually just go and kill him. The presidents, they couldn't go kill Daniel, they couldn't kill Jesus. It would make them look bad, they would become murderers, and they would be punished. It also would expose their true nature. And evil likes to stay in hiding. So instead of killing them directly, they devised a scheme, a plot. They tried to set up a system that would ensure the death. And so the system kills. And as long as there's a system in place, the perpetrators can remain safe in that system. They are not to blame. The system is to blame. And that's how they would get away with it. But the thing is, the system had to be okayed by their leader, in this case, Darius, King Darius. King Darius makes a decree saying that anyone who worships any god or anyone else other than himself would be thrown into the den of lions. Now, even the doctrines are clear that the presidents and the governors persuaded him to make this decree, which really makes them more accountable. In all likelihood, Darius liked the idea of him being worshipped, which is what they appealed to. They needed his permission to go ahead with their plot, but he was more likely unaware of their plot to kill Daniel. He signs it knowing that this is going to be something good for him. His signature was all they needed, and that's what they needed to go forward with their plan. And this is very similar in the case of Pilate. Pilate in the New Testament. Pilate had his own concerns, had his own issues, he had his own things he had to deal with, and he was very uninterested in the affairs of the Jews and the Pharisees. So he, in many ways, carelessly allowed Jesus to be crucified. But that's because the Pharisees were constantly pressing the law against him, using the system to kill. So Pilate signs off on it. Says, sure, washes his hands, it's not my problem. This is making them accountable. In both stories, Daniel is placed in the lion's den, Jesus is placed in a tomb. And both of them got out in the end. And also in both cases, the plot that they used to go against Daniel or Jesus backfired. So the presidents who plotted against Daniel ended up being thrown into the den themselves and devoured by the lions. And the Pharisees who plotted against Jesus, they suffered when their temple was destroyed after he was crucified. And the whole time we see Daniel, a lot like Jesus, constantly being faithful, always praying to the Lord, holding on, and he didn't do anything at all to avoid capture or punishment. He was well aware of this decree against worshiping God. He was well aware of the consequences, yet he still went ahead and did it. And it's a lot like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, praying, knowing full well that the soldiers were out to come again and arrest him. So here we have Daniel displaying again unwavering trust in the Lord, never losing sight, never losing hope or confidence, no matter what was happening to him in the world. He just kept holding on. And so this is a good story to remind us of the purpose of faith. When we think of faith, we typically think of believing in something. Faith means you believe in something, and that is true. You have to believe in something to have faith in it. But it's more than just believing. It's not just acknowledging that there's something true. It's to see that this truth, this principle that is so important, becomes a basis for our lives. We base our lives on this truth. And so then this truth ends up changing our attitude, and it changes our behavior. It changes our life, really. So faith is really big in that sense. And that's why it's, according to the doctrine, faith is a matter of approaching the Lord. It's an action. It's not just a state of mind. Approaching the Lord also with the confidence that he can fortify us. And by approaching the Lord, we are really applying those truths that we believe in to life. We're putting them to practice. It requires action. But as with anything, when we practice something, it takes patience. Which is why faith, most of the time, is a matter of holding on with patience. Things will be difficult. Life is full of ups and downs, as we know. It's scary and difficult sometimes. And those ups and downs really are a change of the state that we all go through. Spiritually, we go through changes of state. And like a roller coaster ride, even though if we feel like we're not getting anywhere, we are in fact getting somewhere. So this is something I'd like to read more about now from the teachings of our church that changes the state that we all go through. This is good to know about. This is number 6645 of the Arcana Celestia. It says, the case for the church in a man is that it successively undergoes new states. For as man is strengthened in the truth of faith and in the good of charity, so he is introduced into other states, the former state then serving as a plane for the following state, and so on continually. Thus, the man who is a church, or who is being regenerated, is continually led toward more interior things, thus more interiorly into heaven. That it is so done is because the Lord from love, which is infinite because divine, wills to draw man even to himself, and so to bless him with all glory and happiness. So, yes, life really is a journey. And as we learn, the journey isn't really a matter of getting from point A to point B, but this journey is a matter of getting continually closer, more internally close to the Lord, which is something he does as we have faith in him. But as with any journey, it will feel wild sometimes. It will be difficult. As the Lord said in the New Testament, if you want to come after me, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. And what is the cross? Cross is often a symbol of temptation, but really we're talking about moments of despair and doubt. Those times when we feel like we cannot hold on anymore, that things are going out of control, especially when the pressure is on. This is something that soldiers especially have to deal with. It's good to talk about that now since it is Veterans Day. Soldiers in service to protect our country and fight for the country are always under direct attack. They suffer injuries, they suffer trauma. And these people are great literal examples of people who apply those principles to life. They really step up and take action for the greater good. And do this also that we here can have the peace and the freedom to go through the rise of our own. So we continue going through our lives, this journey that we go through, which really we're spending most of our time holding on. And notice how we hold on tighter the more intense things get. That really is the purpose of faith, to keep us holding on, to keep us grounded. And the Lord highlights this truth too in the New Testament and other places, this idea of holding on. When the disciples were out on the boat, the waves were crashing, the wind was blowing, they were tossing and turning all over the place. The disciples were fearing for their lives. There were major ups and downs in that ride. And the Lord comes walking out to them on the water, and one of the first things he says to them is, "Why did you doubt? Oh, you of little faith." And the doubt would be to run around frantically, not holding on, being all worried and concerned about things. When the Lord says, have faith, is hold on, keep yourself grounded. Ride it out. He warns us about this in other places too. Things will get rough. There will be wind. There will be rain. There will be storms. Things will beat up, not against your boat, but against your house, your very being. But if your faith is in the Lord, that firm rock, that will keep you holding on. You will endure through all those terrible things. He says this in other places too, that things will be rough. In Luke, he said, "You shall be delivered up by parents and brethren, and king's folk and friends. Some of you shall they cause to be put to death. Yea, ye shall be hated for all my name's sake. But in your patience, possess you your souls." In your patience. Again, a matter of holding on and waiting. We will be plotted against, in other words. The Lord says you're going to be delivered by your brothers and your sisters and so on. Just like Daniel was plotted against in the story, just like Jesus was plotted against in the New Testament. But the plotting really isn't against other people in our lives. The plotting is all again from the evil spirits. Because evil spirits love nothing more than to bring us down, to attack our faith and destroy it. And with that said, evil spirits are really plotting against the Lord himself, which means we are in between. We have all these forces around us. which is the calls for those ups and downs, the rough ride. As the Lord says, have faith. Hold on. Keep applying those truths with patience and trust in the Lord. And He will make you endure. As we see that He is on our side, He is the one who endures. And He is the one who brings us closer to Him. And we can remember that with Daniel in the lion's den. We see him in the den, surrounded by those lions. But with his faith and trust in the Lord, that brought him out. And even though he didn't really get anywhere, he didn't go any place, he came out stronger in the end. The faith and trust in the Lord helps us endure and brings us closer to Him continually. Amen. Let us pray.